Express, we are going to talk about Madaraka Day. One of the dailies this morning is terming it Madaraka Pride, and we're going to analyze some of the progress, some of the things that we have done since 58 years back when we attained self-rule, and see how we are faring on. And joining me for that conversation is Njeru Kathangu, who is a veteran politician. Thank you so much for joining us this early morning, Honorable Kathangu.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So, like I said, one of the papers is terming it Madaraka Pride. It's been 58 years. We are 58 years old. That is no easy feat. Or do you think we need to be proud of the progress we have made so far? What is your take of the state of the nation right now?
Yes, I think first of all, I want to say very good, peaceful day for this nation, and remind them that the first Madaraka Day was welcome with a lot of jubilation. Yes. Because we had taken three main enemies which we were going to fight. Mm-hmm. The one was poverty, the other was illiteracy, and disease, which three had been ravaging our people for a long time since the colonization, since 1920.
Right.
And therefore, there was a lot of promise to the people by the first Madaraka Day, which was the 1st of June, 1963, after 3 years of grueling constitutional talks. Are we still there?
Yes, we are together. Now,
yes. 3 years of constitutional talks, which brought the first constitution in this country from Lancaster, and that constitution remained our anchor, our direction for a long, long time before we started thinking that we should have had another constitution which was a people's constitution, something that was developed by leaders because of, again, inward looking and selfishness, which started developing immediately after the independence and Kenya creating the republic in 1964.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, I think Madaraka Day is such a great day, because to Kenyans, that in fact is the Heroes' Day, when the British gave up and said, listen, I think we had better give this country to the owners, and therefore the people, particularly those who had been involved in the freedom war, felt appraised that their war had succeeded. And so this is really the Heroes' Day. Everything else is labels which do not really raise Kenya to a heroic, patriotic nation as we know it.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about those three enemies that you have mentioned: poverty, illiteracy, and poor health systems. Now, when we look at the health systems, the coronavirus has put to fore some of the challenges that we have been having, but we were getting by because we were not experiencing a crisis. Yes. So if you were to analyze the progress we have made, the situation with health in the country, do you think we have done the best we could have, given that we are over 5 decades on since we attained the mandate to handle our own issues? Let's start off with health. What is your take on the situation with that? Did the people get what they were celebrating those days when we were celebrating the first Madaraka Day as far as health is concerned?
The aim of the dual discussion between KANU and KADU, those days I think was very beautiful. That they were looking at this nation and thinking about how it was going to be transformed from an oppressed nation to an independent, self-ruling nation. And so, looking at education, health, and poverty was gracious, such that Kenyans were going to be instilled with hope and confidence about rebuilding their nation. However, I think the three pillars of the manifesto, the early manifesto of KANU, was correct, but I think somewhere along the line it was derailed. Derailed in the sense that education, for example, started taking a foreign shape without thinking about how Kenya was going to reform itself and change the mindsets of the people. Health system, yes, people were thinking about dispensaries and hospitals, but they were not thinking about the food security.
Yes. There are many other
because
elements.
the food
yes.
security is the main thing of the element about health, that you cannot make it in a health system when your people are not eating right. And up to this day, Kenya does not appear to care about the food security. In fact, even the distribution of that food is a problem, that you can have granaries full of grain in Kitale, while Kitui is dying of hunger, which has not experienced rain for 7 years, and Kitale is complaining about their maize and the prices. So what I would say is this: health has been taken by Kenyans as a political project, that every politician wants to put up dispensaries. They are not thinking about nurses and medics and doctors. Everywhere you go in this country, there is a dispensary, unmanned without drugs, and therefore without food security and without the drugs and good working men and women, experienced and trained, then that one just simply goes up in smoke. Meaning that we can just talk about it, but does not exist.
Absolutely. And in more
about poverty?
Yes. First of all, before we get to poverty, even in more recent times, the health systems were devolved to ensure that they get to the common mwananchi. You have mentioned a very important thing: the dispensaries that are unmanned, underfunded, and they probably don't have the right medication to help the people at the grassroots level, so that they don't rise through the health system to other levels that are more serious. So what would you ideally have the situation be at the mashinani level, and how would you envision a perfectly working, a well-oiled machine that is a devolved health function?
The very first thing is that every location and every sub-location in this country must have a food store first, a food store, so that we know that that way the country is food secured. Secondly, is that we must have training institutes locally, so that you can be able to have qualified nurses, qualified clinic officers, here and there doctors, that they can be able to take up challenges at the local level. And then number 3 is that the central government must always have a kitty that is going to give the local areas some little funding to complement whatever else that the counties may be raising out there. Because without a secured country, particularly in health systems, then the nation becomes weak and can be manipulated and even attacked from outside by anything. And so, for me, what I think we require most is to make sure that every rural area is food secured and well-trained and well-funded health system.
Absolutely. Food security does indeed feed into the health of the nation, and then, of course, the need for better primary health care. But let's shift gears to poverty. I mean, before independence, or rather before self-rule, we had a situation where the white colonial powers who had amassed all the wealth and they were enjoying it at the expense of the poorer communities and the indigenous people of this country. So the hope was that with them relinquishing rule in this country, then everyone would enjoy health, of course. But at the same time, we have seen a situation where the wealth actually moved on to just a few chosen in the country, as some would term them the elite. What is your take on how the country has handled the situation with poverty, and what could we do better right now to ensure that there is equality, even with the division of wealth in the country?
Thank you very much. There is something that Kenyans have been shy about throughout. Shy to recognize that land is the main thing in the world. That if a country wants to have riches, if a country wants to build on investment, if a country wants to have food security, you cannot do it without land. And the first job that every Kenyan and every human being must have is in tilling the land. It is actually a God commandment. Go and till the land. And therefore, each one of us Kenyans should be able to own, and if not own, have access to tilling of that land. Unfortunately, in 1963, when we are taking up Kenya, characters, including leaders, started conspiring so that they owned this nation. They took all the land from the White Highlands. They took all the land from our rural areas. They took all the land in urban areas, meaning the country is owned by about 30,000 Kenyans, which is a big conspiracy against this society. And therefore, when we are talking about food production, you will find that more than 5 million acres still remains fallow, which is arable, but owned by people that simply go with that land to banks for loans. Not for production of food, for loans, money that they may buy the helicopters, they could buy whatever, they go to Zanzibar and invest there, they go to India and invest there, they go to Britain and invest there, while our country still continues wallowing. And therefore, instead of thinking of that land as a major factor of production, the people have taken it to be the security for financing. That has denied Kenya investment, it has denied Kenya independence, it has denied Kenya the food security that we are talking about. And then the next thing is this. You cannot be able to establish any industries in the world without land, because it is on that land that the industry is supposed to be. But if you are going to hold on to that land in urban areas, how do you establish your industries? People have got big ideas, beautiful ideas, creativity, innovations, but the government cannot be able to give them land to be able to put up their factories, put up their plants, because simply land has become too expensive because it is personalized. Therefore, a country without food, a country without industries, a country that is controlled by a few characters, 30,000 in this country, simply means that 90% of the nation will continue to be poor because they are not exposed to anything that they can invest their ideas on. And that's it. That the government should be able to be alert about this. That we need to have a redistribution of the land. And we have to have the redistribution of other resources, including trained personnel. If you go to this nation, you'll be surprised that engineers are concentrated in urban areas. Doctors are concentrated in urban areas. Agriculturists trained in the urban areas. The question is this: how shall we ever open the country to a well-learned, coordinated personnel if we are going to concentrate ourselves into the urban areas? If the country sees that the attitude of the people, therefore, is not as opening as we need to, then it means that the country, through the representatives in parliament and in the Senate and in the executive, should start redistributing cities so that administrative cities can be sent to Nanyuki. Maybe industrial cities could be Lamu and Kakamega. Maybe the administrative cities could be Mombasa and Nairobi, etc., so that the professionals are attracted to those cities and we get closer to where the people are. Because it is the attitudes of the people we should be managing. It is the attitudes of the people whose laws we should be working on. It is the attitudes of the people that we should be able to introduce policies so that those policies are either transforming those attitudes, changing them, or in line with them.
And the need for more access to it, because as it is, it's being used as assets by those who are hoarding it, if I can phrase what you're describing. But at the same time, you see what
Yes.
happens in countries
Yes.
such as Zimbabwe. Land is a very thorny issue. So how do you envision it being redistributed, or you cannot fix such issues such as historical injustices? We see what happens in Mombasa, for example, people who have been laying claim to certain pieces of land that has already been sold to investor after investor after investor. You cannot even trace it back to the first person who bought it. So how can the country reverse this sort of injustice? Because, as you have put it, land is a vital asset that needs to be accessed by everyone.
Yes. You see, like what Zimbabwe did.
Yes.
In fact, what Zimbabwe did was not out of the blues, by the way.
Yes.
Because when Zimbabwe became independent in 1980, they agreed that they would take 10 years so that by the end of 10 years, the white men would be giving back the land to the Africans.
Right.
Now, when the 10 years approached, that was 1990. When 1990 approached, the British or the white men started becoming difficult. That we cannot give it now. Maybe we should get another 10 years.
Right.
And it is going to be unjust for us to be giving land for people that did not work for it, and so forth. And that is how Mugabe ended up giving the order that we must give the land back to Africans. Whatever that may mean, but for me, you need a clear planning to do these things, because people must not feel that you are being denied or deprived. Because you see, if you're going to go to take land from a person who has been on it for 60 years, he is going to feel dissatisfied and therefore react in a bad way.
True.
But if the government's policy is going to be taking over such land for distribution, then what it means really is that we have to plan for it. We have to look for money and other resources to make sure that we do not deny people what is rightfully theirs.
Yes.
And so if we are going to take land from the Rift Valley, for example, where our friend Dalamere owned everything, and I am now told that whatever was Dalamere's now is owned by Uhuru, you cannot understand how these things move from hand to hand. And where they get that money to buy more than 2 million acres. But it doesn't really matter. What matters is this, that we know land belongs to people, that the government would like to take that land and redistribute to the people, then the government itself should be able to raise enough money, establish a fund that is going to compensate the people whose land are going to be taken, recognizing that we have got more than 90% landless in Kenya, and those people need land so that our country can start producing food and industries established all over the place for the well-being of our people.
Okay, right.
We do not have an alternative. That is the option.
All right, let's now shift gears because we are running out of time, sir. Let's talk about education.
Yes.
That's another one, because in order to have an empowered community, or rather country, we have lots of young people in this country who need good education. Even far from the quality of their education, there needs to be a way of them to make use of that education, and that also feeds into issues such as unemployment. What's your take on that? And what do you feel the government needs to be doing? We had talk of laptops and tablets, very promising talk, but when it comes to the work, if the government, actually the current regime, fell short. How would you have the situation be right now if we were to say this is a Madaraka to be proud of?
I think one of the things that I have identified as a very big problem in our society is education program. What it means is this, that if you are going to look at what happens here, is that the education that our children are exposed to is kind of an education where they are not supposed to see anything else other than the examination. Now, examination that in fact it denies them exposure to life issues. Life issues meaning that you have got to understand what it means by having your communities around. You have to understand the history from where your country has come from. You have to understand about what challenges that we have to face the future, and a child should be able to be given the political foundation of his nation, so that you know how your country was founded, so that you know what determination your people had, and so that you are ready yourself to protect, stand by that, and get yourselves in values and virtues moving. We have denied our children that completely. In fact, I remember that while the children were getting educated on political science, what they called civic education.
Yes.
For them to understand the establishment of government, for them to understand the reason why that government is established. Later on in 1980s, that program was deleted from our books, and the people were given in the universities simply to teach about government, and Daniel Roy teach Arab Moi. Now, what is government? Government is about agriculture and livestock and water. And there is nothing else you learn from it. If we are going to have our children on the right path, we must talk about Kenya's political economy. What makes us tick as a nation?
Yes.
How do we trade with others? How are we manipulated by the world, the West and others?
True.
How can we come out of it? How do we relate with others that think like us? For example, we talk about the South and South relationship. All the countries that are developing, manipulated because they are the ones that were colonized. How can our children understand that? Because it is only that can make them be the individuals, women and men, we expect to see in the future.
Okay.
How are they going to create themselves to relate with that world?
Yes.
That, I think, for me, is the education that we need. It is not putting the children and tell them you are going to give them laptops. All the parents, if they are well endowed economically, can buy laptops and computers all over the place.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
But if you are going to promise giving people everything, how can you do that?
Okay. Thank you so much. We could go on and on, but this is the day where the theme is actually what we have done so far, 58 after attaining self-rule. Mtumishi Njeru Kathangu is the former Runyenjes Member of Parliament. Thank you so much for making the time to join us this morning and shed light and help us, help us analyze where we are 58 years after attaining self-rule. And also thank you too for watching us and